Okay. Not bad. You know what? The reactions I've got from people when they hold this Air for the first time, literally everybody smiles.
They're really pretty.
Oh, that is nice.
Because when was the last time we had a genuinely exciting new iPhone? The 10 maybe? The 4? Doesn't happen very often. And you know this is their first step towards a folding iPhone, maybe next year? Yeah, it's very nice. But then you'll say, quite rightly, it's just a thinner iPhone, who cares? And Samsung got there first with the Edge, and you're compromising on the camera, just the one lens, the speaker, just the one speaker, the battery, more on that in a second. It's also eSIM only globally. Obviously in the US, all iPhones are eSIM and have been for a couple of years now, but this is eSIM everywhere. And while Apple is keen to push this a little bit more into the Pro territory, they gave it the A19 Pro chip, it's actually closer to the base iPhone, which is also £200 or dollars less than this. This is $999, this is $799. Why the heck would you want to spend $200 more to get possibly a worse phone in the form of this new Air? Well, I'll tell you, because I really like this thing. I did not go into this expecting to like it as much as I actually do, and it's not just because of the size. This new selfie camera is also a bit of a game changer. So while I've been testing all 4 new iPhones over the past week or so, including out and about in London, and actually what I'm most impressed by is that I didn't get mugged while walking around with these in the city, particularly this bloody orange phone where everyone was looking at it. You cannot walk around with an orange Pro without turning a few heads, but I suppose that's the point. But when you have them both in your hand, this just feels like, hey, it's a fancy new color with a slightly different design, but more of the same. This is genuinely impressive. This iPhone Air, not the iPhone 17 Air, Apple's keen to stress, is in light gold, which is so close to the cloud white color, I don't even know why they have both colors, but there's also a space black and a very nice sky blue. So yeah, it's super duper thin, you know that, and we'll talk more about that in a second. What I really like about this is what I'm going to call the Goldilocks screen. This is 6.5 inches, which is 0.2 inches bigger than the 17 and the Pro, but 0.4 inches smaller than the Pro Max. I love this size. Just about usable one-handed, but still big enough for watching your shows and movies and playing games comfortably. I should also mention the displays on all the new iPhones, except for the size, is exactly the same. They all have the ProMotion 1 to 120 Hz. They all have the same 3000 nits of peak brightness, which is bumped up from last year's 2000 nits. That's when you're in that sort of outdoor sunshine. They also all get Apple's new Ceramic Shield 2 glass on the front, which is not only more scratch resistant, and so far so good. Normally by this point I'd have a few micro scratches that you can see under the light, but no, we're all right. The other benefit of this new Ceramic Shield 2 is that we have an anti-reflective layer. And to give you an idea, here is the Air versus last year's 16 Pro Max, and you can see the sky and the reflections are a little bit darker. It's subtle, but you can tell the difference. Apple say it's about 30% better at reflecting light. Yeah, it's a welcome upgrade, but not exactly a night and day difference. Plus, the S25 Ultra screen is still best in class when it comes to cutting out reflections. Oh, and also, this is a criminally underrated feature, but all new iPhones have an option to turn off PWM. If I change the shutter speed on my camera, you can actually see the difference. Because iPhones have never had a particularly impressive PWM rate, the flicker of the OLED panel could give a lot of people headaches and eye strain, but now you can turn it off, which does compromise on the color accuracy a little bit, particularly at lower brightnesses, but for a lot of people, this is a big deal. The point is though, the Air screen is, for me at least, the perfect size. It's every bit as good as the Pros, and with this design, it's just lovely to use. It genuinely feels like you're holding a concept phone or a future phone. I mean, we're talking 5.6 millimeters thick. For reference, Samsung's Galaxy Edge is 5.8, which is still very impressive and has dual cameras and dual speakers, but Apple is thinner and, dare I say, looks a little bit less like an industrial prototype. But it's when you put the Air against the other iPhone 17s that it really stands out and basically makes everything else feel, well, for lack of a better word, chunky. Versus the 17 Pro, it's 36% thinner, it's 20% lighter, and we have the bigger screen. It's just as tough, we have the same IP68 rating, and they still found room for the action button and the camera control, although I can't say I really use the camera control all that much. So the other iPhones have gone back to an aluminium frame because, well, it's lighter. Apple say it also helps dissipate heat better for improved cooling. But the Air is the only one that's stuck with titanium. Lovely polished titanium frame, which actually, now I'm looking at it close, does actually get a little bit smudgy and fingerprinty. But of course, Apple could not go through another bendgate. We do not want our £1,000 or $1,000 phones snapping or cracking in our pockets. Well, I have good news because I've been doing this quite a bit over the week and it can flex a little bit. Noticeably, in fact, if you really put some force into it. But it doesn't break, it doesn't crack. I probably could if I put my full strength into it, or I bend it against a table or something, but that would go for most phones. And actually, if I can tell you a story, back at Apple Park when they launched these, I had my briefings on the iPhone. It was all behind the scenes, I couldn't talk about it until now. But we went into this one room where they had a machine literally trying to bend it and break it. It was putting pressure sort of right here, and then tried to break it. And actually, as the machine came down, it did really bend the phone. It flexed quite a lot. I was like, oh, we're gonna hear some cracking soon. But we didn't. They took it out, they showed us. There wasn't any warping of the chassis. You know, it wasn't wobbling because it had moved the titanium frame around. So almost like skyscrapers that have been built to withstand earthquakes, you know how they're flexible, like trees are as well. I think they've allowed this to have a little bit of flex, which just makes it a whole lot more durable. So yes, it can flex, but as far as I'm concerned, it's not a problem, and I've had no issues with the durability so far. But of course, I'm only a week or so in with this. We'll come back in a few months and see where we are. But so far, thumbs up. I also expected it to be really slippery, but it's actually not. It's easy to get a good grip of it, and the glossy titanium frame actually feels more grippy than the matte aluminium that you get on the other phones. I would be perfectly happy using this without a case, but I do appreciate you have options. They've got some cases that are only 1 millimeter thick, but also, look at this, a bumper case. We haven't had bumper cases since the iPhone 4, iPhone 5. I miss these things. I loved it on my iPhone 4. It does make it feel a little bit wider in the hand, and that camera module, that camera lens is still exposed. That's the first thing that will hit if you drop it, but it means the screen's a little bit recessed, as is the back here, so maybe get yourself a bumper case, but I'm not really bothered. What I would suggest getting though is one of these, the new MagSafe charger. This is a gorgeous bit of kit, and I'm actually really disappointed that it doesn't work, or at least it's not been designed for any of the other phones. It's actually too tall for the other phones, although you can, because it's MagSafe, use it like that. And that will charge the other iPhones. It's £100 or $100, but it'll add 65% more battery to your phone, bringing it from, I think Apple's numbers are 27 hours of local video playback up to 40, even beating the Pro Max in terms of battery. But it's also incredibly low profile for taking in your bag or your purse. And if you do need a little top up, then yeah, just pops on like that, and you've got a USB-C port at the bottom for charging. Love that. Now I just need it for the other iPhones. So how have they done this? How have they been able to make it so thin? Well, essentially, they've squeezed everything in here, this little camera bump, or what they call the plateau, and is definitely not the same as the Pixel's camera bar. Definitely no inspiration there. But it makes sense. The camera lens, the speaker, the chip, the modem, the haptic motor, everything is in this little area up here, leaving the rest for battery. And it's also kind of incredible that they've nailed the center of gravity. It is exactly halfway down the phone. That's pretty cool. Great. Now that's all lovely and fine, but there are compromises. As I say, they're all eSIM only. But then there's also only room for one camera lens on the back. We only have a single speaker coming out of the earpiece, which is fine, it does a decent job, but if you're watching videos or TV shows, movies, it all sounds, as you'd expect, very one-sided. And if you're wondering how the speakers compare across the whole iPhone lineup, well, here you go.
Tire temps look good. 85 front, 75 rear. You are good to push. Tire temps look good. 85 front, 75 rear. You are good to push. Front, 75 rear. You are good to push. Copy. 5 rear. You are good to push. Copy.
Perhaps the solution would be to get yourself a pair of the new AirPod Pro 3s when you're checking out one of these. And then there's the chip, A19 Pro, which sounds very much like the A19 Pro that you get in the Pro phones. But it's not exactly the same. They've actually reduced the number of graphics cores from 6 down to 5, which we've seen before from the likes of Oppo with their Find N5 foldable that had the Snapdragon 8 Elite, and they cut down one of the GPU cores. It's a sensible choice, especially when we don't have that aluminium frame, which is better at dissipating heat, and we don't have the vapor chamber cooler that the new Pros get. And with this Air, it is all about efficiency, efficiency, efficiency. That's one of my favorite jokes. It's still very powerful though, and if you really push it, recording lots of 4K 60 video or playing really demanding games, the Air does heat up the fastest. I've got the 4 new phones here, as well as last year's 16 Pro Max on the left, and from my little thermal camera here, you can see that the heat is confined to the top of the Air, in that plateau area. Which is actually good if you're holding the phone vertically, because you're not really feeling that area, but if you're holding it sideways, for games, then one of your hands is going to get a lot sweatier than the other. Interestingly though, after about 10 minutes of gaming, it's the base iPhone 17 that takes over as the hottest. You can also see the vapor chambers working on the Pro and Pro Max, pulling that heat down and spreading it out. But just how fast are these new phones? Well, with the 17, we have the A19 chip, with the Air, we have the A19 Pro, and with the Pros, we also have the A19 Pro, but with that extra GPU core. 12 gigabytes of RAM, bumped up from 8 last year, excellent, which will help with, future-proofing and running local AI tasks, and hallelujah, they all come with 256 gigs of storage as standard, even the base iPhone 17. Back to the performance though, and let me give you a few numbers. And in Geekbench, even the base iPhone 17 is faster than last year's flagship. That's very impressive. Between the new phones, they're all roughly on par for single-core performance, with the Pros about 5% faster in multi-core. The real difference though is in the graphics. Again, all comfortably beating last year's Pro Max. The 17 and the Air perform similarly, with the Pro's extra graphics core translating to about a 20% boost. However, switching over to this very demanding 3D Mark Solar Bay Extreme stress test, which is a high-end ray traced graphics benchmark, which also lasts 20 minutes, so you can get to see the impact of throttling. Here, the Air actually falls behind the 17 by about 5%. But it is a clear win for the Pro and the Pro Max in terms of performance. Truth is though, if you are buying an Air and not a Pro, then you probably don't care that much about benchmark scores and playing games maxed out at 120Hz with ray tracing or running local AI models. I mean, you can do all those things, it's still extremely capable, but that's what the Pros were designed for. Faster chip, better cooling, bigger batteries, and the Air is just as fast as the Pros in everyday normal use. I mean, the real MVP here is the base iPhone 17. This is $799, same in pounds, 800 quid, and it performs better than last year's 16 Pro Max. Find me an Android phone that costs £800 with that level of performance. Apple is just crushing it. And even the Air, yes, it gets a little toasty at the top there, and sustained performance can drop a bit due to throttling, but it's still faster than you'll ever need it to be. But the performance, speed, that was never really in question that much. What is in question is the battery life. How long does this last? Well, I've had it for a week or so, and I can tell you, Apple's claim of all-day battery is about right. According to Apple's own numbers, you can expect about the same battery life as last year's 16 Pro from the Air, which is good, but not great. 27 hours of local video playback, they say, but 27 hours bumped up to 40 hours with a MagSafe charger. But this wouldn't be a review if I didn't run my own tests. So after 10 hours of streaming my YouTube videos, and also again including the 16 Pro Max, which is new, I actually bought this for the test, and after 10 hours, the 16 Pro Max was on 62%, 49% for the 17, which surprisingly was the same as the Air, but then 58% for the Pro and 63% for the Pro Max. But then, with all phones topped back up to 100%, playing War Thunder for an hour, maxed out settings, which is a pretty demanding game, the 16 Pro Max is on 78%, the 17 and the Air both on 71%, the Pro is on 80%, and the Pro Max is on 82%. Okay, future Tom jumping in here because I have now run a full battery drain test. This will be a separate video, but I wanted to include it basically because you've been watching this for like, 15 minutes and you deserve the full information. So let me show you my results. So we've got the old 16 Pro Max, the 17, the Air, the 17 Pro and Pro Max. This is a combination of on Wi-Fi and with an eSIM card, bunch of different apps, games, usual stuff, and I'll dive into that fully in the main video. But the Air does come last, but it's not far behind the 17. It's really not that much in it, actually. What was really fascinating, though, is how the new Pro actually beats the old Pro Max, and then this still had about 10% in the tank when this died. So as we expected, the Air came last, but it wasn't that bad, actually, compared to the other phones. And also, we do have Apple's new C1X modem, which is exclusively used in the Air to help improve efficiency. I've also only had about a week with the new iPhones, and Apple's new adaptive power mode, which comes with iOS 26, and based on your patterns and usage, can intelligently improve your battery life. But that's kind of hard to test. Also, before you say, well, Mr. Who's the Boss or Super Saf or Marquez's video had it going for 12 hours, all these tests are going to be different. It comes down to the apps you use, the brightness, the settings, the usual stuff like that, whether you use an eSIM, which I did because I think it's important. Really, it's about looking at the relative difference between them, and it is a big step up versus even last year's iPhones. But depending on how you use it, yes, you can get through a full day with this, and if you need to top it up, just get one of these. It is not a deal breaker. And we also get 25-watt wired charging and 25-watt wireless MagSafe. It does remain to be seen, though, how it will perform in a few months' time. If I look at my 16 Pro Max, this is the one I actually have been using for a year, not the new one I ran the tests with. My battery, after 331 cycle counts, down to 92%. So, you know, over a couple of years, if it's dropped down to 90, 85%, you might start to feel the pressure of that battery a bit more, but maybe that's where these come in. Maybe get a couple of them. Or just, you know, get a Pro. This will last you longer. Can we talk about the camera? Well, we'll come back to this one. I actually want to talk about this one, the one on the front first, because this is Apple's new square selfie camera. And it's a really big deal. And also importantly, all the new iPhones get exactly the same selfie. They've bumped up the resolution from 12 to 18 megapixels, they've roughly doubled the sensor size, so image quality is noticeably better, more detail, more accurate lighting and skin tones. It's also a wider field of view, equivalent to 20 millimeters versus 23 last year, which doesn't sound like an awful lot, but it really does make a difference for how much you can fit in the frame. I'm gonna have to do it, aren't I? Apple's improved the video stabilization with the new 17 in the Air camera, the selfie camera, so I'm gonna have to go for a little jog to show you the difference. So 16 Pro Max versus Air / all the new iPhones. Holding them straight in front of me, arm's length, 4K 60. Here we go. Anyone who's looking at me right now is going to think I'm a complete idiot. But it's also kind of hard to tell as I'm recording this, as I'm jogging. So you have to tell me in the comments below, is it much more stable on the 17, on the Air? I watched it back and holy moly, that's a massive difference for the stabilization. So better image quality, wider field of view, much better video stabilization, and also when you're taking photos, you can switch between vertical and horizontal. This is a whopper of an upgrade for the selfie camera. And I assume even just doing a little brisk walk backwards for some reason, you should be able to see the difference in the stabilization there. This is like a really big deal. But that's not even the best bit. The headline is that we have a new 1x1, so square sensor, rather than the traditional 4x3. So you no longer need to turn the phone from vertical to horizontal to take a landscape selfie, like if you've got a big group of friends. Now you can press this to switch the orientation, and each has a close and a wider angle option. But this can all be handled automatically if you tap here and then turn on auto zoom and auto rotate. But don't worry, you're not getting square photos or square videos out of this. It's the same as you get at the moment. It crops in a little bit into that sensor. But yeah, they've just made it easier to take selfies from one position, which is more comfortable to hold. And if you've ever taken a landscape selfie before, then you know people's eyes are off center, which looks weird. And it can make your arm that you're taking the photo with look weird and long. Vertical is just better. But wait, there's more. Because if I tap up here, I can also now open the new dual capture mode. This is pretty self-explanatory. It's capturing from the front selfie camera and the rear camera at the same time. And unlike Samsung's phones, you can actually switch the lenses on the rear camera while you're recording. On the S25 Ultra, for example, you have to pick which rear lens you want to use. Now, I can actually move my little selfie window around the screen. I can't resize it like I can on Samsung's phones. And my main frustration with this is it doesn't save the videos separately. This is baked in. So unlike, again, Samsung, which saves the rear video and the selfie video, and you can choose what you want to do with it afterwards, this is baked in like that. It also tops out at 4K 30. You can't shoot 4K 60. Obviously, a lot of Android phones have had this feature for a while now, but here we are on iPhone. It does take a second for that stabilization to kick in, then, doesn't it? That's a bit wonky as I punch in for a few seconds. Ooh, look at that. Where's the stabilization gone? Ugh. Maybe some bugs to be ironed out there because, ooh, yeah, look at that. Interesting. So a little bit of judder and maybe a couple of stabilization issues there. But this is a brand new phone with iOS 26, so I suspect we'll see some fixes to that. Yikes. But what about the main camera? because you've only got one. This had better be good. It is. It's effectively the same 48 megapixel camera as the iPhone 17, but no ultra-wide like the 17 gets and no telephoto like the Pros. The 17 Pro and Pro Max's main camera is also higher quality. Yes, it's the same 48 megapixels, but it's a much bigger sensor. Although to be honest with you, most of the time there's not much in it. You'd be hard-pressed to tell, which is great. But then sometimes, particularly at night or in tricky lighting, you can start to see the difference, with the Pros offering more detail, more texture, better dynamic range. And of course, when you zoom in to 4 times and beyond, the Pros just blow it out of the water. There's no competition. For everyday use though, the Air does a terrific job, and punching into 2x is near enough optical level quality. Although not exactly, of course, because it is a crop, but they've added a new image pipeline and they're using machine learning for the first time at this 2x zoom, but it looks pretty damn good and makes for a much nicer portrait photo. Thing is though, even if you don't buy one of these new phones, you will be getting iOS 26, which comes with this pretty big redesign of the camera app, so that will take a little bit of time to get used to. We also do miss out on some of the Pro camera features, like you can't shoot 4K 120, there's no ProRes video, no ProRAW photos, and you also can't shoot video in log. And you know what, to Samsung's credit, they did manage to squeeze in an ultra-wide lens and the same 200 megapixel main camera as the S25 Ultra. And actually I will be doing a full camera test between the S25 Ultra and the iPhone 16 Pro and Pro Max. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. The iPhone Air's camera is very good, but for $1,000, it's hard not to feel a little bit shortchanged. Still, the significantly improved selfie camera, and also of course having the photography styles, which were massively revamped last year, gives you a lot more flexibility to make your photos look more interesting. And I still maintain iPhones are best in class for video, even if there is one thing that still remains. I'll tell you what hasn't changed across any of the iPhones, and that is the glare. These little guys, which can ruin your photo. Yes, we have lens flare, that's one thing, but these things are here forever, it seems. Let me wrap this up really quickly. I know it's been a long video. Someone said to me the other day, I don't want the boring one, and I don't need a Pro. That's the audience for this. People who do care about the looks of it, who do want something different and unique from Apple that will turn heads almost as much as an Orange Pro will do. But for a phone this thin, this light, this genuinely very nice to hold and lovely to use, it's impressive, and I would recommend it. I would, but maybe before you buy one, unless you already have, wait for my Pro and Pro Max review. But what do you make of the Air? Let me know in the comments below, and if you have bought a new iPhone, which one did you go for? Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time right here on the Tech Chap.